Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Kuzma and Brian E. Roach.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast presented by the official NFL photo store. I am your host, Joe Kuzma. I am seconded by Brian E. Roach. And Brian, I keep talking about it. It seems like it's a pun, or it's almost worn out to say photo finish in NFL photo store in the same sentence after you see what we just witnessed last night in a 39-38 Pittsburgh Steelers victory over the Baltimore Ravens.
I just don't understand why they don't love me. They're trying to kill me. I believe this now to my soul.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I was already, it wasn't that cold, but it was great. I guess some people might think it's cold, but it was great December night football for another classic. That's all these teams do is classics, except they don't put up 77 points total. Holy cow, the over-under on that was initially, I think, 44 or 45. So if you didn't get the over, Bob Barker would say,
sorry.
Yeah, something like that. The price is wrong, Bob. But I wanted to also mention, you were the nickname, you had the nickname of the host who doesn't like toast.
Yes.
And I'm the host who loves toast. So we're going to do some wordplay here. GOAT is to Antonio Brown as toast is to Brandon Carr.
Brandon Carr, absolutely.
Holy cow. Antonio Brown, man, 18 targets. Just think, jeez. I mean,
just saying 18 targets seems so unrealistic.
Listen, folks, this is a Monday afternoon coming a little later than usual. We like to pump these out in the morning so you have them on your commute to work or whatever it is for those of you on the East Coast. And we're getting one in the afternoon here. You may hear it a day later because of these late night escapades with all the primetime games. And we're still loopy and can't believe because we're on very little sleep. 18 targets, 11 catches. I mean, I saw Roethlisberger. He was around like 45 somewhere in the fourth quarter. It was up on the scoreboard. I was in attendance there, and I'm sitting there like, how many more passes can he throw? I mean, I already acknowledged that this started with the Titans game. It carried through the Packers game, throwing about 4. I think he threw 45 apiece in each of those. 66 passes, 44 of those complete, both career highs, by the way, for Ben Roethlisberger. 506 yards. He's the only quarterback in the NFL this year to throw for over 500 yards. And he's the only guy in NFL history, not Peyton Manning, not Dan Marino, not Joe Montana, did I say Peyton Manning? I'll say him again just to reinforce it. Not Drew Brees. He's the only guy in the NFL ever in the existence of the National Football League to have 3 500-yard passing games. I was listening to this on the drive home last night. I thought Charlie Batch was a little loopy or maybe didn't have enough sleep or too much caffeine trying to stay awake. I had to double-check this the first thing this morning. I couldn't believe it. And these are – do you remember this little narrative? Maybe just doesn't have it anymore.
Oh, yeah, gee. I think that narrative has been put to sleep now. And I just want to note that 44 that's the second most completions in any game ever. Drew Brees had 45, so he's one away from that. But, three 500-yard passing games. This one, 60-something%, 2 touchdowns, 506 yards against what ranked defense? One of the top 10 passing defenses in the league, according to statistics. I guess he's just up.
Very well could be. I don't know. I don't know if he's going to get started. I don't know if the Steelers – I mean, we got a lot of things to talk about because I think one of the things that definitely stands out in this game is whether or not the Steelers can survive another shootout of this same caliber. We all know what's on the horizon here. I'm not going to mention the P word. This is going to become like a college thing. Like for me and Brian, we follow Ohio State, and they like to get rid of the M in any word with a red X when it's Michigan week, or Michigan week, I should say.
Yep.
This could be the same thing with the Patriots. And I don't know, man. I mean, they have the firepower. We haven't seen what exactly is coming out yet. I know the game early with the shoulder, but he was definitely in a groove there. And I said I was excited. I wanted to see him get going. They got him going. They got Jesse James in this game, by the way. Speaking of tight ends, 10 targets, 9 catches. I saw somebody tweet something like a career day for Jesse James. I was like, gee, you think? I mean, it was just...
Yeah, I think those are Bell's targets. It's 12 and 10.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. That was Le'Veon Bell. Jeez, oh, man. You are right. 12 and 10. Sorry, 97 yards. Yeah, Bell was 9 of 10. I don't even know the one that he didn't get, unless it was one of those pass interference calls that wasn't called. Maybe we should just segue into that first, because I don't want to talk about the Patriots. But holy cow, you want to talk about scapegoating? Or I felt like they were playing two teams last night. You know what? It comes off very homerish and very biased to complain about officiating. I know there's some guys that will just never say what needs to be said. You had the other Walt, and now I get him confused because the week before I think was Coleman and this was Anderson, or vice versa. One was the crew last week that threw the most flags in the NFL, and I looked at this guy's resume heading. You know what? I'm going to pull this up for a second just so I have the right referee, and not that either of them really deserve to protect the innocent type thing. This was Walt Coleman and his crew, and it just seemed like they were trying to keep the Ravens in this game or give them the game at certain portions. Artie Burns twice, one on a really bad one that Flacco threw in the middle of the field. Let me tell you something about Joe Flacco. It's the same thing that I've been preaching for years. Let's throw up a prayer and hope you get pass interference. That's pretty much what he was counting on. They got like the one where Sean Davis didn't run with his man whatsoever, but the other one was like in the center field, and it was the same place where Sean Davis picked one off earlier, which was it was just a really bad pass on the Ravens' first possession of the game. But then there's the one that was like tossed down the field. Mike Wallace covered by Artie Burns, and Mike Mitchell should have had it right in the breadbasket, and somebody throws a flag out, and all it was hand fighting. And it was, is that what you saw? Because I know when I'm at home, it's not the same. Yeah. Or when you're at home, it's different. Yeah.
Here's what happens on that grabs Artie's jersey and holds on to it and essentially entangles his arm along with that. And Artie's really trying to free himself to make a play from Mitchell, or from whatever his name is, the traitor. Young Money, whatever his name used to be.
Mike Wallace.
Yeah. Mike Wallace. Jiminy Christmas. How soon I forget and wish I could forget even more. Mike Wallace. And you know, they're shielded to a certain extent. The ref is shielded. The other side ref isn't shielded. And if you watch it, even if you're going to call something, you have to call it on Mike Wallace in that instance. It's not Artie Burns' penalty. And again, in my mind, there should just have been a no call there. The ball, I'm not even sure. No, that's not the one that was absolutely even worse.
No,
which wasn't. Is the second one where the ball is 20 yards further down the field. Mike Wallace has given up on the play, has made no attempt, and they call Artie for pass interference. That was even worse than this first one. This is the anecdote I'll tell about Walt Coleman that I think describes this game. So they complete a pass to Eli Rogers that looks initially slightly suspect. In review, not that they reviewed it, but in review, when you looked at the replay, it was fine. It would have been a catch no matter what, even if they hadn't jumped up and spiked the ball. But they did before replay could be pulled into the whole process. Ben spikes the ball. Somebody had to tell Walt Coleman that they aren't allowed to review it anymore.
It's done. Once it's done, it's done. You continue. It is in every single sport, let alone football. If this guy watched anything else, once that play is over, it's in the history book. You can't go back and review 2-3 plays later. It does not work that way. It doesn't work on maybe tiddlywinks or something that I'm not familiar with. The rules of may allow for replay. Chess, I don't know. But football, basketball, soccer, anything that has a replay like that, you're not going to go back and video review it. Baseball, none of them are like that. If you watch sports, it just doesn't happen like that. It's almost like, hockey has like a delayed penalty, and the guy puts his hand up, the referee, and they play around, and and then they call it as soon as there's like a change of possession with the puck, right? It's not like all of a sudden, I'm thinking about this delay, and we're going to drop the puck again and restart, and then we're going to come back and do the penalty. It does not work that way, and you're absolutely right. I had no idea what was going on. People started booing because they were already pretty frantic there. Let me tell you, that last drive that Baltimore, when they went up 38-29, sick to my stomach, absolutely disgusted. All I kept thinking in my head was about the "you make the call" feature. I was like, I got like 10 of these articles if I want to write them this week. It suggested I'm gonna do one on Artie Burns here in the near future, just to illustrate these. But before that happens, Sean Davis gets called for an unnecessary roughness. Who was it? It was to Benjamin Watson.
Ben Watson, yeah.
Hooks him around the waist. You could clearly see the ball goes behind where Davis is. Watson's still kind of moving because he made an attempt to catch it. Artie's trying to break it up. It was literally nothing, and it's a 15 yards. Boom, right there. Let's march Baltimore right down the field. So they go from the 44-yard line of their own 44 to Pittsburgh's 41. Now they've crossed midfield. Now you're getting into Justin Tucker territory because the guy could kick it from like end zone to end zone. Everyone there acknowledged that Tucker is pretty much the best kicker in the league, but I think we may have one that's just as good and could potentially be better. But Tucker's been doing it a long time, been very good, so kudos to him at least. Give him props where props are due. So then there's, what do we have? There's a holding call that's declined by Mike Tomlin. There's about 9 minutes left in the game because there was TJ Watt stopped Alex Collins 4 yards short in the back of the end zone. So now this is where Flacco heaves this ball towards the sideline for Mike Wallace, and it's like 20 yards beyond where Wallace, out of bounds no less, beyond where Wallace, I don't even think like somebody sitting in section AA would have caught this ball. That not this is beyond row Z. This is now going into AA, 20-some rows up. They weren't going to get to that ball either, and it's a 20-yard pass interference. Let's move them down now to the 25-yard line and give them a first down. And then you have Alex Collins up the middle for 5 yards, Danny Woodhead for 3 yards, and then Collins gets around the end on a 3rd and 2. Buck Allen goes in for the touchdown right there on that next play. It was like, so you're looking here, and there's 35 yards when Baltimore already started, which they shouldn't have, special teams, on their own 44-yard line. Let's move them down the field on some really hazy type of stuff. Here's another hazy one. How about Marlon Humphrey comes after Antonio Brown, both hands out like he's going to shove him, and Antonio does like an Olay. He looks like a bullfighter or just like one of these drunken Shaolin masters with martial arts, and just kind of pushes him to the side, and he's the one who gets a flag. It's just, are you watching the same game here? I mean, it's just ridiculous. So they give Antonio that one backs up from a nice play too, and it's just all ridiculous. I think the one for me that was maybe even worse, Brian, was okay. Walt with the not knowing about the review thing. Okay. Who on earth thought, now, who was this thrown to? Hold on. I'm going to find this in a second. This was not Mike Wallace. Was it Macklin? Yeah, deep right Macklin, I think. Am I looking at the right one? I think I'm looking at the right one because this was on the last drive. There was less than a minute left. And Jeremy Macklin, if I have this right, because the other one it says they did complete one to Mike Wallace, I believe. And oh no, this was the incomplete with Macklin. Let's see. I don't know exactly where this is now with play, but it was the sidelines where the guy was so far out of bounds that.
Oh yeah, there's Macklin.
It was Macklin. Okay, because both of his feet were like literally in the white stripe. It wasn't even like there was no debate about it. Both officials, none. I don't even think both of the guys on the sideline had any question. It's out of bounds. One guy for sure, very, very adamant. The decision was boom. within a second. He knew. The other guy kind of follows in, and maybe he was screened and didn't see quite whatever. But they go and then stop play. They allow, basically give the Ravens another timeout. It was just, it was insanity. And I couldn't understand it myself. Like, why are you reviewing this? This is garbage. It made no sense to me.
This is my favorite thing of the whole night. Well, okay, that's a lie. But it's one of the things that bothers me about the whole night. So one of the other plays that was so, in my view, egregious and obvious and should have been called was a helmet-to-helmet on Jesse James.
Oh.
And a flag comes flying out, and I am positive they've finally done something right. I'm going to give them kudos. The refs are calling a helmet-to-helmet on this guy. No, they call holding. And it's the same guy who would have called the helmet-to-helmet. And I didn't realize maybe there's a unwritten code, because it certainly isn't a written code that said, if you see one penalty, stop looking because the rest of them don't matter anymore. That's just not the way it works. Oh, I have no flag. I can't throw another one now. Oops, sorry.
Yeah, throw your hat, throw a shoe, whatever it takes. You know, there is protocol for that too, isn't it? A hat. I know the hat can be the guy that goes in and out of bounds. So
throw your hat.
Yeah, it was Macklin. I see it here. It's in this gobbledygook because there's a play before that I want to mention that. But getting back to the replay real quick, it's not only the guys on the field. Does somebody not have the replay in the control room? It's not like Harbaugh can challenge this. This replay decision comes from New York.
Yeah.
Who in their right mind replayed that or even saw it in real time and thought, well, maybe he was in bounds? That should have never stopped play on the field and gave the Ravens kind of a timeout. It was almost like a sympathy type thing, because this is what happens. LJ Fort goes out there. God bless LJ Fort. God bless his athleticism, because Sean Spence and Arthur Moats were getting just annihilated, for lack of better terms. You know what? I like both of those guys, but it is what it is. They aren't Ryan Shazier, and nor is LJ Fort. But somebody had the thought of, we got to do something different here because we can't cover. And LJ is probably the only guy left. He really is the only other guy left on the roster that could play this position, and he's somewhat of an athletic guy. He plays special teams, and he comes in and he rocks Jeremy Macklin, knocks the ball out, and then Macklin was actually injured on that play and then returned for the one that was out of bounds. So not only does LJ Fort knock this ball out, because Macklin is on the ground in a heap now, with a legal hit, mind you, the Ravens lose their last time out because it's within the 2 minutes, and because there's an injury, they have to use a timeout, or it's a 10-second runoff if they don't have the timeout. So they get charged that. The clock ticks it goes from, 42 down to 37, and then they have a complete pass. It goes down to 21. Flacco spikes it. He has a fresh set of downs. This is the replay that was goofy with Macklin. So now it's 16 seconds, and T.J. Watt comes out, flying out of a cannon, beats his guy around the left side of the defense, the right tackle. I'm not sure what his name is, but he comes coming off the left, and he just comes after Flacco. Flacco cannot outrun him, knocks the ball away, strip sack, ball goes out of bounds. You're screaming at your TV. Guy behind me screaming alerts me to what kind of happened because I'm looking off a corner a distance, see the replay. Holy cow, you can't fumble out of bounds like that. The clock's got to go. So as soon as they set the ball, and I didn't have faith in the officiating crew, I said, they got to get this right because they got to know this. They got to know this rule. You've got to know this. They've had to have been schooled on this. They've had to have seen this, and especially Coleman's been around like 20 years or so, 18 years, something. You got to know this one. And when I look up, it's already going, man. It was down to 3, 2, 1. People in the stadium were confused. The Baltimore Ravens were confused. They got in a huddle. They actually huddled up and weren't ready to run another play. Game over, classic finish.
Yeah, Flacco even says after, in his post-game interview, "Oh, yeah, I didn't know. Bad on us." No, of course you didn't know, but the rest of us did. And I'm saying the same things as I said. I'm screaming at my TV, "Start the clock, wind the clock, wind the clock. You got to wind the clock." And you couldn't tell because the television crew didn't even know.
No, they didn't.
One of them needed to understand what was going on, which is you can't if you fumble a ball out of bounds forward, it has to go back to the spot it was fumbled. And the minute it's placed, there is no out of bounds. The minute that ball's placed, it's back on because there's no timeout, there's no out of bounds, there's no nothing. So they did the right thing for once. It does not mitigate the rest of the nonsense that went on in that game, and the fact that, as I am well known now, there's a very small group, but there is a group of Twitter followers and people I think who follow our podcast who know what I'm going to say. They stink. The refs stink. They stink. And clearly, that one good call on their part, because as you said, Walt Coleman, not only does he appear to be as old as a dinosaur, he appears to be as old as you guys tell me I am.
Oh my God! There were people they were saying he's out of touch, and it's hard to defend too. By the way, that rule, if anybody wants to look it up, Brian pulled this. It was Section 3, Article 2, Section F or subsection F, is if a fumble or backward pass by any player goes out of bounds, the game clock starts when an official places the ball at the inbounds line, and the referee signals that the ball's ready for play. And my eyes were like a hawk on it, and I'm trying to look, and the clock's winding, and the clock's even winding on TV because I rewatched this again this morning. Yeah. At least this part of it, because I pulled the TJ Watt clip because it's freaking phenomenal. They don't get the Flacco all day, and Watt gets there. The defense once again rises to the occasion when they absolutely needed to. I have to say the magic of Renegade worked and got a 3 and out, and it's just we've talked about the officiating now for almost 20 minutes, but I had one more. I haven't watched this yet to verify, but there also looked like there was a play where Le'Veon Bell's knee never went down. It reminds me of a play when Arian Foster was with the Texans about 3-4 years ago, where his butt he does like a little twist thing. It looks like something like my kid was playing with, where you twist around on your butt on the floor, and his hand hits the turf. Your hand and wrist is not down, and that's right. And it doesn't look like his knee ever touches, and he just gets up, and he could have just ran on for the races. He could have went 60 yards down the field for a touchdown. I wanted to say that was in the third quarter. I'm not sure though. My memory is foggy. Cold air, alcohol, that'll do that to you. I do retain quite a bit though, and I'm like, holy cow! They blew the whistle on that, and there was only like a real quick replay, and they're off to the next thing. And I'm like, Le'Veon Bell kind of just gave it kind of a look and said, shrugged it off. These guys know now not to yell at the referees. You're gonna get in trouble. You're gonna get a flag. You're gonna get a fine. Whatever else ends up happening. I don't even remember if there were any other things that stood out from that. But I got to say, man, it's a privilege, a pleasure, an honor. I don't know what else I could say as far as to see Ben Roethlisberger, Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, 3 of the greatest players at their positions right now in the NFL do their thing. It is poetry in motion. We're making fun of Marlon Humphrey. We're making fun of Brandon Carr being burnt toast. And I don't even know how, but repeatedly over and over. Ben, that deep ball has been missing for a while, especially early on in the year, but Ben is putting some of these right on the money. If he could get in sync with Bryant, especially if Bryant if somebody would stop holding him, pushing him, grabbing his jersey. Collinsworth in one of the replays I saw so far, I didn't really see anything there. They were allowed to play for the ball. And you're not allowed to grab the entire back of his jersey. It reminds me of the play with TJ Watt getting held where AJ Green would have scored from a week earlier. It's like, are you watching the same game? It's just... there's nothing better than seeing. I wanted to joke. 1 GOAT, 2 GOAT, 3 GOAT, 4. Chris Boswell too, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got we wrote about this before. We did a series of articles, I think early last year or late last year, about the relationship between Brown and Ben, and we need to be absolutely treasuring each one of these games, because to watch those guys in sync with each other, to watch what they have and the connection that they have, that is just a rarefied thing. And someone like me, I probably won't ever see it again. But, even the younger guys that watch a game, they may never see anything like this again, because it takes time to develop, and it doesn't even always develop. They know where each other are going and what they're thinking, to a point where, the play can break down and Ben's going to throw the ball because he knows where AB's going to go, even though it's no longer in the play. It's not a play anymore. It's just some weird synchronicity in their brains. And if in fact he got on those kind of wavelengths with Martavis Bryant and, you know, Juju or anything like that, it would be unfair to the rest of the league. Not that I actually care, but it would be unfair to the rest of the league because there'd be no stopping them. And the way that they've been playing the last 4 games, it doesn't actually appear like there is any stopping. I mean, the Ravens slowed them down at the beginning of the third quarter. They had 3 series that were really essentially ineffectual. And that's because the Ravens changed up what they were doing. They started bringing heavy pressure, and they had to adjust. But as soon as Ben started understanding what was going on, boom, they're back again to being unstoppable. They just go right down the field. You know, and there was a point, even a moronic announcer like Chris Collinsworth, and yes, I'm going to say it, he stinks too. He's as bad as the damn refs. Was able to see at one point just how good Ben is playing right now, where, you know, he hard counts them into exposing their blitz. He now knows where Suggs or the blitzer is coming from. He tells the line to adjust, and the very next thing, boom, he hits AB. You know, he's just playing at an extremely high level, and they need him to, because the other side of that story is the defense. And you're right. They rose up. They showed some fortitude. They showed some backbone when they had to. But, oh, my God, let's also give a little bit of credit to the Ravens for being dunderheads who, at that point in time, when all you need to do is run the ball a couple times, something we have obviously showed you that we are unable to stop. Instead, you run it once, get 6 or 8 yards, and then throw 2 incompletes. You don't deserve to win.
Well, it's almost the Steelers doing the same thing. It's like run the ball for Boswell's field goal, right? It was like, okay, why are we throwing a deep ball there? And Ben, he throws one towards Eli Rogers that's tipped and could have been picked. And you're just like, oh, my God, like what's going on over here? So before we continue on, because there's so much there to talk about, especially with Big Ben, I want to remind everyone that the official NFL Photo Store is a sponsor of the Steel City Underground podcast. What that means for you Steelers fans is that you could score photos of top plays and your favorite players, including all the GOATs I just mentioned. Visit steelcityunderground.com/photos for a link to go over to the team's official online photos store, where you'll find the largest selection of premium quality photo canvas and metal prints with new photos added every week. And of course, if you've forgotten, Steel City is a special promo code that you could put in when you go to check out to get 25% off. So visit steelcityunderground.com/photos for the official NFL photos store. Brian, I got to backtrack here. We're talking about Ben, 43rd game winning drive. He's had 4 of those this year alone: Indianapolis, Green Bay, Cincinnati, and now the Ravens. And it's really impressive. But there were 2 things. You're talking about the hard count. I think, well, let's talk about the beginning of the second half. I only saw one outlet report this. I didn't even see the beat writers send this out, that Vance McDonald had left the game with a shoulder injury. I don't know if it was reported on television or not, but I noticed the Steelers were running a lot of 2 tight end type sets, especially without Juju. It looked like Vance McDonald was playing in the slot. We saw how much Jesse was effective, as mentioned, but going over to Vance here, Vance actually had, 6 targets. He caught 4 of those for 52 yards. It was starting to be a coming out party for him as well. He leaves the game, and the Steelers start to do just single tight end set to 3 wide receiver now, more with Brown, Bryant, and Eli Rogers. Eli wasn't, I don't think, as integral to those plans. I think the game plan was to take these 2 tight ends and let's go at their linebackers and let's confuse, maybe open up some single coverage for Antonio Brown with Jimmy Smith out of the game. I thought the game plan and the calls were pretty good overall. I think there's 2 and I can't wait to hear Ben Roethlisberger's show on Tuesday morning to see. I hope that Ron Cook and Andrew Filipponi on The Fan bring this up, because Ben Roethlisberger, if you aren't aware, has a Tuesday morning show. So I want to know if, I think there's one where he yells out something like Pringle Pringle, and it looks like it's a pass play. Everybody on his line, they open up the middle of the field, and Bell is even in pass pro, and Ben just scoots up 2-3 yards. I swear he called that and knew he calls that play knowing he's not going to throw it. And if it's there, he's just going to run it, because there was no hesitation. There was like a second hesitation. He goes and takes it. The second one is Roosevelt Nix, who makes a phenomenal catch, and nobody knew that he caught it. And everybody's like, Ben's just throwing the ball to somebody in a black jersey. I don't even know if he knew it was Roosevelt Nix. And I have to think, with the personnel they had in, I don't even know that Antonio Brown was in the game. It was all heavies. It was the big boys that were in there.
Yep.
And he bootlegs out for a pass play, and everybody's like, "You're a yard away. What are you doing?" And Roosevelt Nix is the beneficiary, wearing his number 50 under the jersey. He was pulling up at certain times after he laid a licking on that very first opening kickoff for the tackle. Yep. I'm like, Ben had to have called that, because if he didn't, this just kind of speaks to the narrative of where people are like, Todd Haley, what are you doing? And it's like, I think Ben was trying to get creative there and saw something. I don't think that something was Roosevelt Nix, though.
Oh, I don't think so. I think that was a play that broke down. They had some other intention. And the best part of that play is probably the only time you are ever going to see a touchdown reception that is also a pancake, because he laid Tony Jefferson flat out. I mean, he catches the ball and then look, Tony Jefferson is used to defending and hitting guys like Antonio Brown, not Roosevelt Nix.
No.
He took the brunt of that impact without a doubt. That was just a beauty to be seen, by as far as I'm concerned.
Roosevelt Nix listed at 5'11", 248. He's a bowling ball. I mean, that's just crazy. I'm going to get over to the defense. I'm going to let you take the defense here in a second, but we have a little pause for a little sponsored message from Golden Tate of the Detroit Lions, who sends out
I love it.
He sends out a tweet. He sends out a couple. He goes, "Dear at AB84, which is AB's handle on Twitter," he goes, "Can you take a night off? Yours truly, all in caps. Other NFL wide receivers trying to catch you." And then he has one more, at AB84 at NFL. "Furthermore, can business get a holiday or something? Does it always have to be booming? Golden." Signed Golden. That's absolutely tremendous. We would be remiss to not talk about the defense. Do you want to talk about I talked about LJ Fort and the inside linebackers. Do you want to talk about Cody Sensabaugh by any chance?
Well, no.
I'm laying it on you.
I don't want to be too negative about anybody. Look, you knew it was going to happen at some point. With the way that the secondary has been playing, Joe, we've said it for 3 weeks in a row. Joe Hayden cannot get back fast enough. On the other side of that, look, Cody, I don't know whether it's communication issues. In several of those instances, I don't know whether to blame Sean Davis for not coming over a safety help over the top. I don't know whether Cody's letting a guy go. I don't know 100%, because it's really hard to see angles on the TV broadcast to determine where the blame was. And on one of those first long touchdown passes, I kept watching it and was getting yelled at, trying to go backwards and forwards to see, and I just couldn't tell. I couldn't tell who was getting torched there. But it's not good enough. Let's just put it that way. It's not good enough. I will say this. Cam Sutton coming in made some plays again. And I think maybe, Tomlin said he was going to play them both about equally. I think he probably did. I don't think that's the same thing that's going to happen next week, though.
I think part of the reason Cam Sutton did not play a full game, did not get the start. One, he's rookie. It's his second game ever. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know that sitting on IR. We talk about football shape. We forget about it after training camp and preseason are over. But football shape with James Harrison as well. I think we all saw why James Harrison has not been playing. I think there's different things stressed upon the outside linebackers. I think we discussed this, or you and Zach may have discussed this in the preview too. And him speaking also about playing for, I would have played somewhere else, or I wouldn't have signed. No, you wouldn't have been anywhere. I don't think think anyone was going to roster. They weren't going to roster him when he was 35. Why are they going to roster him when he's 39? So that was kind of nonsense to me. But yeah, I think you're right, Cam Sutton. We're hoping to hear something about Joe Hayden, hopefully soon. We need to, because it's a completely different secondary when he's there. Artie Burns probably doesn't get enough credit for guarding a lot of the wide receiver ones. In this case, Mike Wallace. I don't think Artie was abused at all. I thought Artie played a pretty solid game. It was hard to tell on that one. I was trying to figure it out. I'm like, was it zone coverage? Was somebody covering the wrong zone? Was somebody supposed to be man? I think the Ravens stacked 3 guys on the same side of the field on that play, and somebody just scampers free, and Davis doesn't backpedal with them, and Flacco's got an arm. He could throw it deep. That's never been in question. More or less, whether or not he's elite has always been in question, and I say no. The outside zone type stuff you were talking about, I think we started talking about this with the Packers and talking about with the run, stretch running plays. You're going to be crazy if Bill Belichick doesn't try that. You'd be crazy to think he's not going to try that in another week.
Absolutely. First, look, Collins, 120 yards on 18 carries. He had his way in so many different ways. I mean, he almost pulled the Le'Veon Bell like from Cincinnati, where Arthur Moats has him by the ankle. He manages to get away. He scoots around another guy and gets down the field much further than he should have ever been. The tackling at times was absolutely atrocious. And look, here's the bottom line: you're trying to replace Ryan Shazier with Arthur Moats, Sean Spence, and L.J. Ford.
Yeah.
And that's 3 guys trying to do one guy's job. And quite frankly, the equivalent, the sum of those parts is still not Ryan Shazier. And they are going to, this was the first game. So it's going to be, a little bit of a work in progress. It should be better next week. But there were points in time where they had no middle linebacker on the field.
Which I was okay with, except for the fact.
Absolutely.
Except for the fact that we pointed out Javon Hargrave ended up on Danny Woodhead, which was strange.
Oh, that was bad.
But the Gravedigger nearly forced a fumble early in the game. But I thought it was interesting. They left him on and took all the linebackers. There were 6 DBs on the field. You had the 3 down linemen, the 3 horsemen, as you like to call them, and then it could have been any of the outside linebackers at that point. It may have been TJ and Bud Dupree, or it could have been Harrison and Chicolo. I don't remember who was out there, but you're right. They pulled them. They were basically playing Will Gay as the center fielder, and then they played L.J. Fort in that spot as the aforementioned hit on Macklin, and then the timeout that needed to be burned in the last minute of the game. So yeah, that's definitely going to be a work in progress. You would hope it'd be a little better. I think a lot of people forget, we're going to see, because we're recording this ahead of Monday Night Football, so you still got the Patriots and Dolphins. We don't know the outcome there. Right now, the Steelers are on top. Assuming the Patriots win too, it's for all the marbles next Sunday afternoon when the two face each other. But the Patriots have had to overcome a lot of the same things too. They lost Donta Hightower, or however you say his name. I don't care. I call him sleazebag for trying to use the Steelers to get a better deal. So, and you see how that turns out now with the whole depth issue and whatnot. But not to say that Hightower was going to be a nice plug-and-play player for the Steelers anyways, and who's to say he wouldn't have gotten hurt just the same way he did in New England. So New England has its own defensive woes and things like that we're going to preview coming up. But before we sign off here, got to mention, we're teasing about this, the other killer bee, Chris Boswell. He has 32 field goals now in 2017. It's the third most by a Steelers kicker in a single season. One more will tie him with Gary Anderson in 1985. 2 more will tie him for tops overall. Norm Johnson kicked the most, 34 field goals made in 1995, and Boswell still has 3 more games to go. I think he's going to eclipse that. You were also contemplating whether or not Antonio Brown could break a record too.
Absolutely. Like, Antonio Brown is at 1,509 yards right now. And I don't remember actually what Jerry Rice's, or whoever's it is, Jerry Rice or Megatron's single season yardage record is. But there's been this talk of a 2,000-yard receiving season. Well, Antonio Brown only needs 491 yards in the last 3 games. And the way these guys have been playing, that's not unreachable. If he has a big game next week against the Patriots, that all of a sudden becomes even more plausible. Because right now he only has to average 161 yards a game. That's a big number. But
when he gets 200, it's possible.
Yeah, if he were to hit another 200-yard game, because look, I think that there's a very realistic chance, and I don't want to jump all over the Patriot game yet either, but there's a very realistic chance that we could, be looking at another shootout. And if that's the case, Antonio Brown is probably going to get his opportunities to have a big game. So let's say he has a comparable game to this week, next week. Well, now that number drops down considerably. He only needs 100 yards, or maybe 120 or 130 yards a game to get that 2,000 yard mark. And since I'm pretty sure that the record is less than 2,000 yards, that record is well within reach, and there's a good chance he goes over 10,000 yards for his career next week as well.
I grabbed it for you. It's 1,964 yards set by Megatron, Calvin Johnson, with the Detroit Lions in 2012. There was a gentleman named Wes Chandler who led the league. He had 1,032 yards in the strike-shortened 1982 season. His average was 129 yards per game, which is the other record. So we could see if Antonio Brown, if he gets anywhere near either of those, it has to be MVP talk, because now Carson Wentz is out with the ACL. I think he's removed from that conversation. Who else is the leader? And you know what? That's a whole other topic we could get into heading into this upcoming week. So, Brian, once again, my pleasure having you on the Steel City Underground podcast, my friend.
It's always a pleasure to get the band back together, man.
It's always a pleasure to complain about officiating for half of the show. So
absolutely. That's always a pleasure.
So, folks, do you agree with us or disagree? Leave your comments, positive and or negative. We only delete the negative ones. So I'm just teasing. Oh, yeah. We really don't. Let's profane.
Speaking of which, though, I have to give a shout out to Mr. Goodell.
Oh, yes.
The commissioner. Thank you for nominating me for most valuable podcaster. I don't deserve it. I'm not worthy.
Yeah, and like everyone, and now I'm going to take the side of Jerry Jones here and say, Goodell, what are you thinking? I should be the MVP here, So I crack up. A great commenter. I know you're listening to it, so 2 thumbs up if I could give you 2 on YouTube. So until next time, folks, his name is Brian, and my name's Joe. Be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.